Welcome back, everyone. I'm Seth Roth, and today I thought I would show you guys a little bit of what's been going on under the hood on my Skyrim load order. This load order is largely inspired by the Lost Legacy mod list that I tested a few months back. You guys might remember a couple of videos that came out of this. It uses some interesting things like Odinator, which is a perk merging of Ordinator and Vokrin, which are fantastic perk overhaul mods. Keep in mind, I know this video is pretty long. If you guys just want to jump ahead and see the details of my load order, I am actually posting this stuff. I'm posting this stuff onto a website called Load Order Library. This allows you to open up both my plugins list and my mod list, and it even maintains the categories in which I put all the mods. So you guys can actually see not only my load order, but where I'm putting it in and why, which makes it so much easier when you're trying to understand someone else's load order when it's already in categories. It's so nice. So I hope you guys enjoy this little tidbit. If you guys want to look at it, this address will be in the description. If you want to skip this video and just check out the description and check out the link yourself, feel free to go ahead. Links in the description below. You can see over here, if you use the archive search, there are many mods that went into this particular load order, about 90% of which I really liked. But given that I'm used to making my own load orders, inevitably like NPC overhauls and stuff started speaking to me, crying out to be added into my very own load order, and this is the closest I've gotten so far. As you can see, we're rocking a little over 600 plugins with maybe a dozen patches of my own construction. We also have about 787 mods currently enabled. I made a couple. I've been learning how to make not just a stable load order, but one that's like bug free, like doesn't crash. This particular load order has crashed. I've only had one crash to desktop, and I've trained a character up to level 28 using the, if you remember, the experience mod that slows down quest progression and character leveling. More specifically, it slows down character leveling by making it require quest progression. So I've done a lot of exploring in this mod, testing out a bunch of different locations and powers and abilities, and I've only had one crash desktop the entire time, which is saying something, because if you guys remember from last year, my previous iteration of this was up just over 300, and that like broke my brain. And somehow we're rocking 787, and it's stable, and I'm so excited. But I'm getting to the point where I might actually start over and do a third iteration, because I've been learning about this group that uses something called the method, which is like to create a bug-free load order. Like it doesn't crash, which just boggles my mind. But I figured before I did that drastic overhaul, I'd want to show you guys everything that I put together so far. I set it up into categories, kind of in a similar way to how Lost Legacy sets up their categories. Some of these are very straightforward, like you've got your audio project, your USSCP patch, campfire. Some of those are very simple and straightforward. One of the things that can be a little deceptive when you start seeing these big, large load order numbers is there are things that aren't particularly complicated. So for example, I have a bunch of textures here, right? Aren't plugins. So for example, this is just a texture overhaul. So for example, you can get a bunch of texture overhauls that don't actually show up in the plugins section because they're primarily just texture replacers. And you could load in like 300 or 400 of these, and your mod count will look really high, but there isn't really a lot of complicated stuff in the load order. At the same time, you could download only 100 mods, but make them like big and constantly contradicting each other and constantly conflicting with each other, and you could have a very complicated and difficult load order on a lot less mods. So take this with a grain of salt. I'm at about half of these mods are... let's see. So if you start at the unofficial patches and come down to probably about weather or cities and towns, that's about half of them. To give you an idea of how these mods are distributed, about half of these mods are to make it look good, sound good, under the hood kind of fixes and that sort of thing. And weather mods, of course, are a lot of fun. Cities and towns, we're still going with JK Skyrim. I did a video earlier on beautiful cities being merged with JK Skyrim, which is just a freaking work of art. It's glorious. Speaking of glorious, I have glorious doors of Skyrim, which is wonderful. We're also trying to fit in fortified Whiterun to make the exterior look more imposing and defensible. There's actually some places here I still haven't explored in this load order, so even despite all of these empty mods that I haven't added yet, there's still so much that's active that I haven't even explored, because I've already brought in a whole ton of stuff. Anyway, so getting on to the more complicated stuff, perks and leveling, I've got Vocinator. This is an earlier version that just uses Ordinator and Vocinator. If you look up the Vocinator mod on the Nexus, it'll go for Vocinator Black, which is actually a mixture of 4 perk overhauls. You have to, when you go to the list to download the files, you want to go back to the earlier ones, and then you'll find these patches. Also the Experience mod, which I love because it just makes leveling... I love getting experience from quests and exploration rather than just going to the smithy and suddenly walking out at level 20 because I just was making iron daggers for an hour. You know, that's not as fun for me. We have a bunch of custom skills that I, by some miracle, got working. We'll be talking a bit more at a later date on unarmored defense and hand-to-hand. They come into play with a specific build that I was toying with during this playthrough. You guys remember, I've done a lot of mods on spells. The addiction has not gone away. You'll remember some of these, the 4 Horses of the Apocalypse from last Halloween. Colorful Magic, I did a showcase from that a while back. Fenderic's Elements is coming. That's added in a whole... I could do a whole nother deep dive on everything that brought to play, because it actually integrates all of these other spell mods that I haven't actually done showcases for yet. Yeah, so I may have an addiction for magic mods, but most of them are so easy to fit into a load order as long as you're not stupid and you're reading the descriptions and you're checking for conflicts before you bring them in. A lot of these, they can just plug and play, and they're fun and adds a lot of variety, and yeah, good times. So just very light on the crafting in this particular load order. We've got Summer Mist. Arx Metallica is nice because you can melt stuff down to get iron out of it, which just makes sense. Like you can take 30 iron arrows and turn it into an iron ignet. So even if you are a melee guy, you can still collect a bunch of arrows and turn it into something you can craft, which is great. I haven't gotten Honed Metal in yet because that's more of an NPC overhaul, and I haven't... I'm learning how to make a stable load order, and this was an experiment because I tried with one simple motto. If any of these mods had a lot of conflicts and a lot of record changes that I didn't understand, I just didn't touch them. So I went through a 2,000 mod wish list. Yes, there's 2,100 mods in this thing. Just looking for the stuff that could easily be added into a load order without creating a lot of conflicts. And just doing that gave me almost 800 wonderful mods. And it's stable. It's fantastic. So for gameplay, we're using a lot of Ni Scion mods. Andromeda, Thunderchild, Imperious, Winter Sun obviously is fantastic. I found a couple of Dragon Shout related mods that actually merge well with Thunderchild without a lot of problems, and we will talk about those at a later date. I also brought in, let's see, Survival and Immersion. I've got Wearable Lanterns, Sun Helm, and Immersive Diseases. Those were able to fit in really easily as compared to something like Hunterborn or Spell Research that just takes a lot of patches and there's a lot of conflicts involved. And the tricky thing with conflicts when we get into Xedit is not all of them are bad. You know, just because there's conflicts going on, a lot of those are intentional. So you have to really know what you're doing to be able to separate the ones that are good from bad. A lot of immersion mods I hadn't really focused on yet because I've been focusing on adding in some bigger stuff. I was experimenting with Better Vampires, Moonlight Tales. I've already done a video on Undeath, so I'm not worried about that one. This is one that we're going to do a video on later. It is a shout that is brought into the compilation. You automatically learn it after doing a very small quest that comes and finds you. Please don't die. It unlocks a thing called a Were-Dragon, which is basically like a werewolf that can use shouts and change into different kinds of dragons depending on what draconic line you want to use. It's beautiful, and it hasn't caused any conflicts in my load order. It's fantastic. We also have the Champion of Kinnereth, which is the next iteration of the Wrath of Nature mod. I want to show you guys some of those shape-shifting options as well at a later date. So next we have some light combat mods. Similodon, Know Your Enemy, Mortal Enemies, Draugr upgrades and improvements. I like Mortal Enemies because it makes it easier to dodge bad guys. Combine that with true directional movement, and you get a game where you're actually trying to dodge swings rather than original Skyrim where you just take hits and chug potions. Real bosses, I haven't quite noticed a lot of changes there, but part of that could be my fault because when I'm testing, I'm in immortal mode, so I can be focused on the mods I'm testing, not on not dying. And Heartbreaker is just fun. I'll show you that at a later date as well. Vanilla quests, we've got a couple quest overhauls. I like Dungeons Revisited. I think I've talked about that before. It just expands a lot of the earliest dungeons so that you have more to do and more to experience when you're low level. The only new quest mod I have is Achieve That and Missives. Achieve That is just, it fits into a load order so snugly. It doesn't cause a lot of issues, and it gives you extra quests. Missives, I haven't tested this one out a lot yet. I think the load order is just fine. But that might be something we can check out a little later as well. I was able to work together a couple of different player homes that are fun. Ebon Grove is somehow working. I'm not even sure how the textures for that. I ran Dindy Lod once, and it got buried in stuff, and then I ran it again and it worked. So I'm still learning about that, but there's a couple mods in here like Leveler's Tower and Leaf's Rest that are particularly unique, and we'll be getting videos down the line. New Lands mods, we actually were able to get like half of these up and running. I was surprised because New Lands mods tends to add in a lot of changes, like Chantrell brings in an entire subcontinent. I wasn't ready to get into Xedit and go through all the nav mesh changes and make sure that all that was fine. But we've got Identity Crisis, Skyrim Underground. I've mentioned that in a previous video. A lot of these mods are based on Dwemer quests, which are fantastic. Carved Brink, I know is working. I haven't been able to finish it yet, but I at least got it started, and I know that it's not going to crash my game if I go there. Glenmoral was still a little buggy. I haven't started Moonpath to Elsewhere yet. Crovaxis works just fine. These two are technically player homes. There's like you go into a little mini dungeon to earn them, so they technically count as New Lands mods. Clockwork is amazing. That's gonna show up in a video sometime. Maybe this Halloween, it might be appropriate, because Clockwork is freaking scary at the beginning. And then there's a couple other odds and ends you've probably seen in other load orders, but I haven't really. I tried out Falskar. I got about halfway through that before I started testing other mods. That one's pretty good too. There's quite a bit of open space there, so you'll be traveling a lot. I haven't done a whole lot of weapons and armor mods, just some highlights from my previous load order. A lot of the immersive armors and weapons. Zim's immersive artifacts are fun because they take a lot of the artifacts that you get in Skyrim and upgrade them, give them new abilities, new features, that kind of stuff. So it kind of, when you go back through your vanilla quests with Zim's immersive artifacts in place, every time you finish a major quest line, now you've got a new item that is enhanced and more unique and better than what you had in vanilla. It kind of reflavors the entire experience of vanilla Skyrim. And obviously there's a whole lot of weapons and armor mods that I haven't really gotten into yet. I have always got my triple triad card game because I love Final Fantasy VIII, and any card game that can bring that in is just fine by me. Enemies mods, I keep finding a lot of these. Part of the reason why I have over 2,000 mods here is because some of these mods conflict, right? They're not meant to go side by side. I mean, if you're going to use Revenge of the Enemies, that's already going to add new capabilities to your dragons, your Draugr, your undead, all of the bosses, right? It's a massive enemy overhaul, and so is Skyrim Revamped. Genesis is similar, but it just makes more of everything. So a lot of these I still have to tinker with to figure out if I want to add them on top of my current enemy lists. But if you're starting your own load order and you're trying to minimize issues and you haven't quite figured out how to get under the hood and make your own patches and stuff. One way to avoid complications is to use mods that focus on one enemy at a time. So, for example, I have Obis for my bandits, Deadly Dragons for dragons, obviously, and then over time, as I've gotten better, I've added on other dragon mods that are compatible. And it's gotten to the point where I can actually trigger Deadly Dragon assaults with 3 dragons attacking me every 6 hours. And I've been through like 3 waves of them with no loss in, no lag, no bugs, and no crashes. So this entire dragon overhaul package is working fine. Better vampires is always fun because it just makes them worse to fight, which is funny when you're talking about making enemies worse. Draugr upgrades and improvements are cool because it gives them more nasty little toys to surprise you with. And Deadly Dragon Priest is just mean. They just become mean. So mean. So yeah, I'm always a fan of these kind of enemy mods to make, because it's so easy to overpower yourself when you're picking out mods for Skyrim, but enemies and combat are the 2 areas where you can really crank up the difficulty on the enemy end to make the game more challenging. I haven't brought in any new creatures. I am running some body mods with mixed results. I'm using my NPC overhauls. Mostly I've got interesting NPCs. I haven't really done a video on that yet, but it's been working. I actually haven't tested that a lot yet, so I don't know if I can say that it's working perfectly. I still need to test it. Bijan overhauls, I particularly like that version of the female characters that it overhauls, as well as the Serana-holic. I like that version of Serana. I have installed her dialogue overhaul, or dialogue add-on. I was trying to test her earlier, but she was having some issues, so I'm not sure if that's my fault or the mod's fault. I still have to figure that out. Men of Winter is a nice overhaul for your males of Skyrim, because they tend to get a little left by the wayside when someone like me is modding and goes girls. That's just how it goes. Okay. Oh, this is a fun one. Real names. It takes all of the vanilla characters, so rather than being attacked by 5 or 10 bandits, they all get their own random names. And it's a small mod, but it makes it all feel more immersive because now everyone has names. That just works. Followers, I was able to get quite a few of them up and running actually without a whole lot of complications. Lucian is actually one of my favorites because you get used to these modded characters. Like you guys have seen Morgaine and Inigo, and they're very, very tough. Like they're ready to handle the dragon. Whereas Lucian is like, oh, that's a dragon. And he starts lower on the heroic totem pole and grows over time, which I really like that feature in a follower. And a bunch of these I still haven't been able to test out yet, largely because I haven't bothered to look up where they are. A lot of times when I bring in a bunch of mods, I'll just wander Skyrim and see what happens. And then once I get bored, I'll start looking at where things are and what I can trigger and what I can test. Let's see, what else is there? I think that's most of what I wanted to show you guys because I haven't done any physics or animations mods. But you can see why I have so many just lying in the wings, because there are certain elements of modding that I've been nervous to try them out. You know, but animations are coming soon. I think I will be starting over this load order, because now I have a much better idea how to create a bug-free load order that doesn't crash. But unfortunately, all of these plugins that have been installed were not under that specific method. So there is kind of an overhaul that's going to need to happen. But I wanted to check in with you guys and do some videos down the line of the mods that I already have up and running, because that just seems like the thing to do. And I am playing Baldur's Gate 3 on the side, which will also be a lot of fun. Alright, so this is my current load order. Feel free to check in the description below. I will be posting a link to both the mod list and the plugin list in its entirety if you guys want to have a look at what's currently up and running on my load order. Alright, with that, feel free to like the video, subscribe to my channel. Stay tuned, more Skyrim videos are coming down the pike, along with more of my Baldur's Gate 3 playthrough, which is turning out to be a lot of fun, because the inner D&D player in me just cannot get enough. I hope you guys are having a wonderful day, and I will talk to you later. Take care.